The theme of this discussion is restoration of passenger confidence through technology and innovations. The panelists consist of the following distinguished representatives: Mr. Pete Newell, Practice Leader, Network Planning and Scheduling, NPS from Sabre. We have Dr. Justine Maeda, Head of Surveillance and Disease Control, and Disease Intelligence at Africa, CDC. We have Mr. Wasim Crady, Director, Business Development at SITA. And finally, we have Mr. James Hardie, Head of Marketing Information Management Services at Collins Aerospace. This session will be moderated by no other than Mr. Johan Pauwels, Regional Vice President, Africa and France, Airline Business Group at Hahn Air. I invite Johan to take the floor.
Thank you, Maureen. First of all, on behalf of the management of Hahn Air, I would like to thank Rui and the team of TAG and Abderrahman and his entire team of AFRA for this wonderful organization, be it virtual. While there's a lot we do not know, we do know the travel industry as we knew it is heavily disrupted. Early indications show people are ready to travel again. However, they do require reassurance and clear communication from all the stakeholders. In order to improve confidence, airlines, OTAs, and other verticals will rely heavily on technology for the communication of new guidelines and protocols. This brings me to my first question. Pete, welcome. How do you expect airlines to address the questions most, if not all, of the passengers will have, such as what is the new process, do I wear a mask on board, etc., when they decide to travel again? Pete?
Pete Newell is just connecting. Give him a couple of seconds.
Okie dokie.
Pete Newell, please unmute your microphone.
Yes, can everyone hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Yes, Pete.
Okay, I'm trying to start the video, but it won't remove the red line. To answer your question, yesterday the Secretary General spoke of the need to communicate passenger confidence. That reminded me of a survey I saw back in April or May in the early stages of the pandemic and the first lockdowns. And in this particular survey, it listed 20 activities, things like, and it asked the respondents, what are the things they would do first? It had things like going to a restaurant or bar, visiting a friend's house, going to a movie theater. And respondents could say they were going to return to that activity in 3 months and 6 months, first half of 2021, etc. International, the list of the 20 activities, international flying came in 19th. And the only thing worse, the only thing passengers or respondents, were more scared of was taking a cruise. So international flying and domestic flying was, I think, around 15. And they came in behind things like attending a crowded concert or sporting event. So it wasn't just the fear of being next to people, but there was a fear specifically of flying. Since then, airlines have responded. Some airlines temporarily blocked middle seats. Many airlines have implemented touchless check-in processes. There's been improved aircraft sanitation processes that are being followed. Almost all airlines are mandating masks on board, and airports as well. Enhancement of filtration systems have been developed, including the implementation of HEPA filters. So a lot of the industry has definitely taken a lot of steps to alleviate that fear. Recently, there was a study done by IATA that had basically it proved that an airplane was effectively one of the safest places from infection. The filtration systems result in air being circulated and recycled every 3 minutes. Compare that to our houses, where it's an hour, or your offices, where it might be every half hour. The rapid recycling of air on an aircraft significantly reduces the risk of infection, such that sitting next to a passenger, even when a middle seat is not blocked, you might be a third of a meter from that passenger. That's effectively, in an aircraft environment, is effectively as good as being 2 meters away in a normal indoor environment. So I'm telling you all this, but the fact is that you probably, like me, you probably know all this already. You're in the airline industry. You attend webinars, you attend conferences like these, you read articles on the industry, and you're quite familiar with the steps that the industry, including you, have taken to mitigate the risks of COVID infection. But you are not the customers that you're trying to sell to. So I'll give you a personal story. In September, I had a need to take a trip. We live in Florida in the US, and we needed to take a trip to Virginia, which is 1,400 kilometers away. I had discussions with my wife on how we would go there, and I wanted to fly. It was a 2-hour flight. She preferred driving. It's a 14-hour drive. So she had a significant fear of flying. And it's understandable. Consumers are not privy to all the information that we have about the advances that the industry has made. To them, you're flying in an enclosed tube for 2-3 hours, or if you're flying international, it could be 8 or 10 hours. So the point is, communication is key. The things that we are aware of as an industry, we need to spread to the flying public, or potential flying public. We need to spread awareness of the facts and the science that we have, and dispel some of the myths. In the effectively 9 months of coronavirus epidemic, the number of transmissions on board an aircraft has been 44. There's only been 44 known cases of COVID transmissions in a time period when you've had as an industry, we've had 1.2 billion passengers. So the odds of, and granted that 44 number is relatively understated, but even if we assume it's multiplied by 10, the risk of transmitting the virus on an aircraft it's as good a place as you can be. Only hospitals have a safer airflow environment. So in addition to spreading that awareness, it's important that we train our customers. We ended up flying, but hadn't flown for 6 months, and most of your customers are in that environment. So you have to notify all reservations of your mask wearing mandates, emphasize the modified boarding procedures. So in that September trip, one of the times I was able to persuade my wife to do something I wanted to do. So we did end up flying. It was a round trip. It was with a connection in both directions. So we ended up flying on 4 flight segments. The first majority of the trip, the adherence to social distancing and mask wearing was impressive. There was announcements before online, via email, via text of the expectations of a passenger. There was announcements at the gate about the alternative boarding procedure, announcements on board. I noticed, though, one thing. On the 4th and final segment, upon landing, or before landing, I was waiting for the announcement that had been made the first 3 flights, which was before getting up and retrieving your carry-on bags from the overhead, stay seated until the row in front of you is fully vacated from their seats. On this 4th flight, the flight attendant just simply forgot to make that announcement. What happened? As a result, there was the normal chaos, the pre-COVID chaos. As soon as the plane was at the gate, everyone's getting up and social distancing is totally gone and everyone's getting their baggage and lining up in the aisle. So in conclusion, the path to achieving passenger confidence is to over-communicate. It's better to repeat ourselves than to miss a communication. So make sure to inform your passengers, remind them, and remind them again. And thank you.
Thank you, Pete. I'll turn to Wasim this time. Wasim, welcome. My question for you is, do you agree that industry-wide data collaboration is fundamental to recovery, as today it is a struggle to get these valuable data airlines need to evolve? Hi, James. Is Wasim Marine?
Yes, I see Wasim is already connected.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Wasim, I can hear you.
Okay, fantastic. Hello, Johan.
Welcome. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. So yes, fundamentally, the brief answer to your question is yes. You know, we all know that the key to the success of our industry today is to move forward. We need to understand the challenges, embrace technology, and really execute a clear vision that goes beyond the limitation of each of the individual stakeholders. So there is today a growing interest from the market to automate and optimize airport operations through the use of smart technology to deliver process and cost efficiencies. And automation enables a better social distancing and passenger flow through the airports. In certain cases, it can even improve processing times. So I can give you a couple of examples here, like, for example, the Health Electronic Travel Authorization, ETA. Basically, it allows governments to receive the information they need and to keep their country healthy. So travelers are required to come, provide information on the health status, and are informed of the assessment's outcome in advance of travel. So basically, this gives the travelers the confidence that they will be allowed to complete their journey before it begins. And when they are at their destinations, they can actually focus on their trip and knowing that they can be contacted in case of any potential concern. Another example is as well advanced passenger processing, which basically gives the ability to assess the risk. And soon as well, it will also include health risks. So it allows to permit or deny travel at the point of check-in. So basically, when coupled with the implementation of a health ETA, it enables a real-time check to be performed to confirm that each traveler has completed the required health checks and is eligible to travel. So for the travelers, it provides greater safety and surety of travel and a smooth border processing experience. On a different note, we all know how much COVID-19 outbreak has changed the processes and the flow of airport operations. So in addition to weathering the economic storm caused by the pandemic, the airport and the airline stakeholders have adopted a lot of regulations that are basically affecting their operations. And they need to redesign the operation to protect the health and the welfare of both the staff and the travelers. So today, flexibility, agility, but also collaboration and coordination have been significant virtues to be displayed by all the stakeholders. So airlines need to provide more information to the airports about departing and incoming flights ahead of time so that airports can be ready and make sure that operation at the airports are optimized, but still compliant with all these new regulations and, you know, mainly in social distancing. Airline operation at the airport has also been disrupted, where in certain cases we have seen one or more terminals being shut down and only maybe one terminal operating. Sometimes in certain cases, only part of the terminal. So this flexibility requires a lot of collaboration between the different parties to adapt and change whenever it is required. So under such conditions, solutions such as airport management solutions and airport collaborative decision-making are providing to all stakeholders alike, the airports, but also the airlines, the ground handlers, and the governments, real-time passenger monitoring and actionable insights. So for the airports, as an example, they need to know in advance and manage the passenger movement through the airport, make better resource allocation, and do space optimization. For the airlines and the ground handlers, they need to optimize operation and they need to adapt to sanitary and health constraints. So it has become a necessity today to proactively manage crowd densities and social distancing during daily operations, and at the same time be able to do longer term planning. So this is where technologies like video analytics come into play. Also, by utilizing technologies such as information display systems, airports can send passengers personalized mobile messages, like, for example, your gate was disinfected 10 minutes ago, or you are now, your row is ready to board through gate 5. So this added level of communication can place passengers at ease through their entire airport journey and basically allow passengers to have more confidence in travel.
Thank you, Wasim. What comes out of your speech is that we're talking about collaboration, use of new technologies. Coming to you, James. Welcome again to the panel. Now, referring to Wasim, do you think that the widespread use of biometrics could be a game changer on the war on COVID-19?
Yeah, so the whole thing with biometrics, I think, really is that it is part of the overall solution that is enabling improving the flow of passengers through an airport. What also biometrics keys into other things that concerns with management in countries where people are the various authorities are looking to manage the security of the airport terminal and obviously the aircraft as well. You look at what ACI has been saying. Their sort of vision, the Airports Council International, is to have a walking pace flow through an airport, and this can be enabled by use of modern technologies like biometrics. Many people will be aware of the new things, device stuff that's on your phone, and the increasing capabilities of biometrics at various locations that have started to adopt it. It's certainly a technology that is going to help with that flow. If you think about people moving through any area en masse, there's elements of control that have to be put in place, and what you have to do as well is manage the bottlenecks of any process of moving people through. One of the problems with perhaps with the whole restoring confidence aspect for aviation is that there was always a certain amount of anxiety associated with just traveling. It's fairly depersonalized. You arrive, you're kind of put into groups. You have to go to certain places by certain times. You're boarded, you're strapped into a seat, and all of that is quite anxious for people. What studies have shown, though, is that if you can give back some elements of control to passengers, then they feel a lot more happy about the process and how they can manage it themselves. And that's where what you're looking to do is use the available technologies, whether it's in the airport or on the aircraft, or just adding applications that are stored on people's own personal devices that aim to give back some element of control, and yet still also manage the data that goes on behind the scenes, that enables the whole optimization of this process. So I think there's some great opportunities with technologies. Biometrics is certainly one of those. You will see the cameras, and you'll understand that those cameras can do additional things. They can monitor other aspects of health and potentially look for other indicators that might allow you to discreetly talk to a passenger and suggest that another test might need to be done. Just the awareness that that is going on might cause some anxiety for people, but it might also lend itself towards the fact that if I do turn up at the airport, I'm confident that most of the other people there will not be a risk to me, and that I'll be able to proceed with my journey. It's not just a matter of the fact that the aircraft itself is a very safe environment to be in, but it's also about making sure that you are very unlikely to have somebody on board who is actually infectious at this time. So that is a concern. But I think as well, as we look to the future and people moving forward and embracing these technologies will enable the growth of aviation that we were enjoying before to return a little bit more quickly, improve the confidence of passengers, many of whom will only fly once per year or maybe less than that. It's not all about business travelers. So we're trying to make sure that the technologies that are used are also technologies that have become very familiar to passengers, so that it eases their use, reduces their misunderstandings that might occur about what to do and when, and losing control of things, and just enable that flow to be maintained through the airport and onto the aircraft. Ultimately, the airport or the aeroplane is not the destination. People want to travel from somewhere, from some place back home to another place that's a temporary home with friends, family, relatives, or on a holiday or for business. So that's what we're all looking to do with all of this technology.
Thank you, James. So it's about traveler confidence, health issues. So I'll turn to Dr. Justin from Africa CDC. Doctor, welcome to the panel. I've been made aware by Maureen from AFRA that Africa CDC, AFRA, and other partners are actively promoting a harmonized, standardized, and coordinated entry and exit for travelers in the African Union member states through digital solutions. I think that most of our audience has no real idea about what you guys are doing. So would you be so kind to elaborate on this?
Thank you, Joe Power. Hope you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Thank you very much. As you mentioned, the Africa CDC is the public health agent that has been mandated by the Africa Union member state to safeguard the health of the continent. We recently launched what we call the Africa Against COVID-19, Saving Lives, Economies, and Livelihood. And this is to mainly ensure that as we are trying to protect infections and we're trying to protect lives, we should also not jeopardize the economic and livelihood activities that have a general stake on the African continent health at large. So looking into that, we have been working with member states and all different stakeholders, mobilizing partners and any other key players in this to ensure that we safely opens the borders, economies, and livelihood without much increase the rate of infection that might be expected due to such. But with that, one of the biggest issues that has been observed is that most of the countries are implementing a wide range of pre-entry and exit measures that need to be harmonized across. So to ensure that also requires a lot of collaboration, coordination, communication, and ensuring that we come up with at least one common point or a nearly common point on how do we harmonize this and try to ensure that passenger or travelers, when they travel, they face a minimum disturbance possible. So these will create trust among the travelers, but it will also encourage what we call trust among countries. So if a country X implementing a certain measures, other countries should be able to trust on it and ensure that the information is produced by one country should also be trusted and be accepted on the other country. So we have been working that, and through that, we are engaging every stakeholder possible, and the airline transportation is our key stakeholders through AFRA and others who are participating in all this process.
Thank you, Doctor. So basically, what Africa CDC is doing is looking at the future and going back to the future, Pete. In what other ways do you think that airlines can reduce customer hesitancy to advance purchase air travel in light of these uncertain future infection rates?
So you mentioned a word there, uncertainty. So we as an industry are facing uncertainty, and our customers are facing uncertainty. COVID infection rates are not predictable. And within that, there's a lot of variance by region, by country. Future quarantine policies are not predictable. Ireland and many other countries in the past month have restarted some quarantines. Who will implement them in the next month? On top of that, there's other restrictions. Many countries are requiring a proof of negative test within the prior 48 hours. So all these things obviously, particularly quarantine, significantly impact your demand. And airlines don't control these constraints. There is potential, however, for airlines to influence these constraints through technology and through promoting awareness. Airlines can test upon arrival and use that as support to relax quarantines. Some airlines have been partnering with universities to produce studies that indicate the relative safety of air travel that I mentioned earlier, and using that to lobby national regulators. All that being said, the direct control you have is limited. So what airlines can, however, directly control is the schedule. Now, in 2020, that's been a total, the network planning and scheduling process is totally different than it has been in the past. And just to kind of put some detail behind that, when we're sitting today at mid-November, but let's turn back the clock to 4 months to July of 2020, when we were already deep into the pandemic. However, if you looked at a November 2020 schedule back in July, that November 2020 schedule would actually look quite similar to November 2019. Similar number of flights. If you looked at OAG or Innovata, similar number of seats offered. What it would instead happen is, as you got closer to the date of departure, there would be a reduction. So in August, maybe some airlines would start to reduce some of that published capacity. September, a lot more would reduce, and October, even more reductions. And this would be using advanced booking data where you would identify flights that might have load factors below 40% or some threshold where you're effectively not even going to make level 1 profit. And this makes sense. And if you look at it, and November is not done yet, but if I looked at August or September or October, the end result is that actual operated schedule was only 50 to 55% of what was published just 3 to 4 months earlier. So the result was a lot of canceled flights. Now, you did have some passengers that booked on those flights, so they have to be reaccommodated. They might have been on a nonstop flight and get reaccommodated on a less appealing connecting itinerary or an interline itinerary. And that drives some loss of customer confidence. And it also impacts the booking curve. So it's kind of a chicken and egg thing now. It's not just business markets that wait very late on the booking curve, but even leisure passengers are waiting to the last minute before booking travel. And that impacts your ability to predict what demand will be. So what are ways that airlines can respond to improve schedule reliability and have that have a positive impact customer confidence to gain some advanced bookings once again. And there are some improvements in artificial intelligence, specifically the use of shopping data that can be used as a better indicator of what is the intent to buy travel in the short term, but the pre-booking term. So we're looking about 2 or 3, 4 months out. So how do you take advantage of that to provide a schedule for December or January or February that's more indicative of what will actually be operated? So in conclusion, network planning and scheduling has adapted to COVID-19's uncertainty by providing uncertainty in the form of schedules that change before the date of departure. But advanced data and analytics, if they're used effectively, can enable the next step. Basically to enable your airline to provide a more reliable advanced schedule and that's closer to what you will actually operate, which will be another way to alleviate customer uncertainty and give them confidence that the itineraries they'll purchase have a better chance of actually occurring on the date of departure. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete. Wasim, my next question is for you again. Like Pete said, artificial intelligence and so on and so on, but a seamless travel experience seems to be gaining traction within the industry. But where do we start?
Well, as a passenger myself, for me, a seamless travel experience is as simple as a journey without surprises. No hassle, no long waiting queues. So today, from a technology standpoint, we come close to such objectives by starting to adopting contactless walkthrough technologies. So the starting point for all of us is to really agree what is the objective, then align on the processes in this current context, and to reach that target, and finally use technology as an enabler to achieving that. So currently at this stage, we've come very close to harness the technology that allows us to adopt such approach. But it's very important really to align on the objectives and involve all key stakeholders, as there is no one size fits all in that domain. So let me give you here an example. The Beijing International Airport, for example, has implemented SITA Smart Path technology. And they are using facial biometrics to deliver an end-to-end walkthrough experience. So basically, passengers are using their face as their boarding pass, and they could as well use it as their passport as well. So they have the airport has completely automated the entire outbound passenger journey, from the check-in to the backdrop through to immigration, security, boarding. They only need to enroll first at the check-in, and they then can experience a seamless journey through the entire airport, removing the need to show any passport or boarding pass. So this improved passenger processing means a shorter queuing time and better social distancing for all the passengers. And an added benefit in these times of COVID-19 is that the process removes any need to touch any airport surface. So basically, this is also reducing the risk of infection. So here we can see is key in terms of seamless travel experience, bringing new challenges from different stakeholders inside the airport. And it's very important here to have an alignment in between the governments, the security agencies, the airport operations, the airlines, the ground handlers, everyone. So this is today, but on the longer term, and looking forward, we expect that the development of a universally accepted self-sovereign digital identity will replace traditional passports. So further reducing contact points and ensuring as well as seamless travel. This digital identity will allow the traveler to cross borders with any airline at any airport, while at the same time passengers remain in full control of their identity. So this self-sovereign identity will give the passengers the flexibility and an additional layer of security, and will allow the identity holder at any time to reveal the data required for the transaction itself and not beyond that. So today, SITA is working with the Sovereign Foundation to explore how this concept of self-sovereign identity can solve today's challenges and really transform the air travel industry. And this idea we're working on with our partners is building on enhanced biometrics, digital documents, smart contracts. So we can completely transform the arrival experience by leveraging trusted data and checks from departure to digitally cross an international border before even traveling. So in other terms, today, passengers would be able to have their baggage inspected and verified by the destination authorities while still at their departure point. And one of the consequences of that is that that will actually increase the airport throughputs eventually by design, and not necessarily by every time looking at expanding physically and geographically. So ultimately, what we're aiming to create here is significant value for all the stakeholders of the air transport industry, airlines, airports, but also governments, while at the same time making sure that we protect the passengers' privacy by design and increase their safety.
Thank you, Wasim. You are really busy with the future, but I'd like to ask James, which are the most urgent solutions to regain the much needed traveler confidence?
Well, I think that goes to many of the things that have been said. I mean, Wasim just mentioned some things that are, yeah, they're in the future, but they're actually here right now as well. It's just that it's the very near future in terms of adoption. I think that we need to be looking at the data management. That is an area that people may be concerned about. There's obviously personal data that's being transferred between various different agencies, and the control of and management of that. But I think that is well understood by many of the stakeholders here in the airlines, and we've been handling passenger data obviously for many years. In terms of the technology, I think that there's an element that there's a lot of the technology that's right there for the use of us, whether it's in personal handheld devices or in various kiosk technology that you would use on site. But the issue perhaps is as we adopt these things, that there's a light touch perhaps with government regulation, so that existing technologies can be taken on board and well understood as we move forward into the future, adopting these technologies and allowing what has been described as this seamless flow of passengers, whilst also maintaining any of the otherwise larger concerns about safety and security. This can be handled. There is a great opportunity to accelerate the acceptance of certain technologies because of the crisis. It's made everyone stop for a bit, take a look at what's out there, and consider how that can be changed in the future. Because again, we don't want to necessarily be building huge, as a result of passenger throughput increasing. Demands on a terminal. The terminal may be adequate, or it could be adopted in a smaller way, as long as other aspects of technology were taken up. So the implementation of a biometric solution is more than just a camera. It's really about the data that goes behind that, interoperation between various different agencies, whether it's the airline, the airports, the different governments, security, and all of those kind of controls. So I think it's understanding what data there is, managing it well, and that in itself will free up a lot of the other concerns that will just evaporate with that. So and then that leads into passengers having increased confidence again. They're happy to travel. They want to travel. We've seen that as soon as the airlines were able to, people were traveling, albeit there was difficulties with crossing borders, perhaps to some degree, because of the different rules that were in place. So there's also that harmonization that has to go on right now amongst countries about what's acceptable for when people can travel and under what restrictions.
Thank you, James. Sorry, I'm under time constraint. The organizers have asked to move forward, so I have a last question for Dr. Justin. Coming back to Africa, Doctor, do you think we have a coordinated approach in Africa as far as the airlines are concerned?
Yeah, so a simple answer to that is yes. Through the leadership of the African Union Commission, where Africa CDC is also it's also hosted under this political organization, and the Department of Infrastructure and Energy, we have set up what we call a multi-sectorial technical task force. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Doctor.
Yeah, so we have set up a multi-sectorial technical task force that spearhead the whole process, as I said earlier, to ensure that we have a coordinated and collaborated efforts toward the reopening of airspace. And it is to have different stakeholders who are working under the air transport sector. That varies from AFRA and other organizations that are working on this sector. And the key issue here is to solve three key questions. How do we, first of all, advise and in a real practical terms on countries to really harmonize and work together to harmonize the different entry and exit requirements that they put in place, including the testing. So, for instance, if you look around the testing, you'll see that most of these countries have even the validation of the testing certificate range from 48 hours up to 14 days within different countries. Some are implementable, some are not. And the key function of this task force is to make sure that this information that is sent to countries and is really for countries to implement it are informed by data and evidence based on the upcoming science. As you may know, this pandemic is really evolving, and every day we're coming up with the new information and evidence. So that's one. Second is to make sure that we have the coordinating efforts to a wide range of stakeholders represented by these different organizations who are the member of the task force, to create an enabling environment for harmonization, standardization, and mutual recognition of this and mutual trusting of measures put in place and pre-entry and exit requirement. And last also that is being taken by this task force is to make sure that they provide regular update to their members and affiliated organization matter that requires their intervention as organization. So this mechanism, and through this, we can all achieve the same goal that we want: to save lives, to save the economies, as well as to save their livelihood, and to allow people that the pandemic should not be an obstacle for travel and should not be an obstacle for economic progression within the continent. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Justin. So I'll have to wrap the panel discussion. What came back clearly is collaboration, clear communication, automation, flexibility, artificial intelligence. I would like to thank the panel members for this very interesting panel discussion. I hope to see you soon live, and in the meantime, stay safe. Maureen, back to you.
Thank you very much, Johan, for very well moderating the panel discussion. And thank you very much to our panelists, Pete, Justin, Wasim, and James, for sharing with us your insights on use of artificial intelligence to enhance and improve information exchange between governments and airlines and airports, also on use of technology to design a contactless journey, and also on use of technology to define multiple hygiene layers, such as to reassure passengers and restore confidence.